Real talk, have you ever questioned why the spark dies right after the grand words? Envision this, you're in a charged moment, her hand finds yours, the script says intimacy, yet the room goes strangely flat. I'm so into you, delivered in a voice that could read a receipt, pupils calm, phone face up, attention elsewhere. Then on an ordinary Tuesday, no stage, no audience, she leans on your shoulder as you rinse dishes, breath slows, time loosens its grip. Which one's real? The body often knows before the story admits it. Welcome to PsycheFlame. Female desire decoded, 7 ways to spot if she's faking it, essential insights for men who prefer truth over theater. This isn't about cynicism, it's about clean vision. Think Jung's shadow meeting Freud's reaction formation, Machiavelli's courtly politics playing out in modern dating and Stoic presence, Marcus's inner citadel, Epictetus's control of the controllable becoming your baseline. The warrior protects standards, the lover offers warmth without need, the sage tracks patterns over promises. Together they form the king, sovereign, calm, unbribable. Expect contrarian twists. Why passion peaks around gift-giving and vanishes in the comfort phase. How emotional incongruence, words saying yes while energy says maybe, exposes performance. Why your outcome independence magnetizes authenticity. Quick aside, this shifts the game. Attachment theory gets practical, when anxious or avoidant loops make intimacy a performance art. Trauma-informed insight stays central. Performance is often protection, not malice. Still, boundaries remain sacred, power with not over, consent and mutual respect always. Consider a second scene, a bar buzzing low, amber light on wood grain. She arrives with glitter and choreography, big laughs, strategic touch. You keep a steady pace, no chase, no freeze. The theatrics soften or exit. A quieter woman later asks a real question and waits for the answer. Presence does the filtering. You don't interrogate, you observe. You don't coerce, you invite. If this strikes a chord like the video, subscribe to PsycheFlame for more tactical insights to master these dynamics. Share it with a fellow navigator of shadows and drop your key takeaway in the comments to sharpen the discussion. Enter this episode ready to trade wishful thinking for pattern recognition, ready to replace performance with presence. Breathe, slow your gaze, and let the silent storm of unspoken drives come into focus. The real edge isn't chasing chemistry, it's reading reality and moving like a man who can't be bought by counterfeit heat. Have you ever noticed how her enthusiasm seems to evaporate the moment commitment enters the conversation? Jung would call it the clash between persona and authentic self, the polished mask of desirability meeting the unnegotiated truth beneath. Modern dating rewards that mask, training people, especially women, to perform warmth without risk, attraction without surrender, intimacy without exposure. Here's the uncomfortable edge. Desire can be performed, and the performance often looks flawless. Consider the first tell, mechanical reciprocation without initiation. She'll respond when you move first, mirror your hand, echo your energy, say me too to the feeling you name, but she doesn't originate the spark. It's a duet where only one voice composes the melody. Her affection appears like a reflection in glass, convincing from the right angle, empty when the light changes. Watch for the pattern, not the exception. A single spontaneous text doesn't erase a month of silence unless prompted. Second tell. Selective memory about intimate moments, real arousal imprints. People remember specific details because emotion tags memory. What was said, the offbeat joke, the song in the background. Performance often forgets. She recalls the headline, "Last night was amazing," but not the scene, what joke, what song. When intimacy is scripted, sensory anchors blur. Picture a man many have met in a mirror. He notices her responses arrive on cue. The sighs are perfectly timed. The compliments are copy-paste. You're so different. No one understands me like you do. Week after week, nothing varies. One night he changes the rhythm of the evening, different pacing, different focus. The cues don't change. The soundtrack plays regardless of the scene. He doesn't feel desired, just cast. That cold recognition isn't cruelty, it's data. and the data isn't rare. In 2019, research in archives of sexual behavior reported that roughly 2/3 of women had faked arousal at least occasionally. Not because women are deceptive by nature, because many were taught that managing a partner's feelings is part of femininity and that safety often requires appeasement. Casanova, centuries ago, noted in his memoirs that passion is sometimes granted for harmony or advantage. The mask isn't new, the stage simply moved to screens and texting. So what? Recognition frees you. When you can spot performance, you stop begging the mask to love you. Validation-seeking dissolves. You return to standards. The Stoics would applaud. Strip away ornament to see the thing itself. If her desire doesn't self-propel at least some of the time, texting first, planning a moment, seeking your eyes without prompting, you accept reality without drama. Not punishment, not manipulation, ethical awareness. Boundaries aren't walls, they're filters that protect dignity and invite the real. This is where the shadow enters. Beneath persona lives the unspoken, fear of rejection, hunger for power, longing to be taken seriously, shame about wanting too much or too little. The shadow doesn't make her bad, it makes her human. But if persona runs the relationship, both people collude in a lie. He overperforms to win a performance, she overperforms to keep approval. Nobody is met. The warrior archetype in a man matures when he refuses the counterfeit and keeps his center long enough for the authentic to surface, or for the mismatch to end cleanly. Practical lens for you, track 3 things: initiation, memory, variability. Initiation answers, does she ever move first? Memory asks, does she recall sensory specifics from meaningful moments? Variability wonders, do her expressions change with context or are they canned? When at least 2 falter consistently, you're likely dealing with persona. Adjust accordingly, slow the pace, state your standard, observe. Curiosity over confrontation, calm over chase. Quick aside, this changes everything. Once you see the pattern, you don't need arguments, you need presence. Men who understand this stop auditioning. They lead with clarity, not pressure. They respect honest no's and reward honest yeses. They become difficult to manipulate and easy to love. Because here's the looming revelation. Genuine arousal and performed arousal don't just feel different, they look different in the body. Breath becomes irregular in a living way, not metronomic. Micro-expressions flicker unpredictably. Pupils shift, skin tells on itself, time perception slips. Performance tends to smooth what biology roughens. And when you know what the breath, the eyes, and the skin reliably reveal, you stop guessing. Building on that shadow dynamic discussed earlier, biology reports in blunt Morse code. Genuine arousal isn't a script, it's a reflex. Pupils dilate, not once but in pulses when attention locks. Breath shifts from chesty chatter to deeper belly waves, then quickens unevenly. The body mirrors, posture angles toward you, rhythm syncs, gestures echo yours without thought. Authentic desire refuses to stay tidy. Third indicator, absence of spontaneous physical escalation. Real attraction self-initiates. She closes distance without prompting. Fingers drift to your forearm mid-conversation, knees angle toward you, her voice leans softer, slower. When desire is performed, proximity requires permission slips. She may respond if you lead, yet her body resets to neutral the moment you pause. Nothing builds on its own. You'll feel like lifting a kite with no wind. Fourth indicator, inconsistent arousal timing. Biology loves patterns. Performance loves convenience. Notice when desire shows up. Only at the goodbye hug, only after you pull away, only with wine, only when jealousy flares. Then it vanishes under steady, sober closeness. That on-off glow is less chemistry and more strategy or self-soothing. Evolutionary impulses don't clock in only at midnight. They leak across the day. Schopenhauer would call this the will to life at work, an ancient directive moving through bodies regardless of polite intention. Authentic desire serves selection pressures, not social scripts. It's inconvenient, sometimes politically incorrect, and often beyond negotiation. The persona may smile, The organism votes in dilated eyes, flushed skin, and reach behavior that betrays the mask. Micro-story. Picture a quiet living room, phone glow on her cheek. A clip plays, her celebrity crush laughing in an interview. Notice the tiny shift. Her lower lip catches briefly between teeth. Breath pauses, pupils widen a shade, then she blinks slower. Minutes later, the partner leans in with a compliment. She smiles, says the right words, but the breath stays regular, the eyes don't pulse, the hands stay still. Different. A man who trusts perception lets the contrast teach him. Research from the Kinsey Institute and allied labs backs this uncomfortable truth. Physiological arousal patterns diverge from verbal reports far more than most expect. Measurements like pupil dilation, heart rate, and genital blood flow often reveal responses people deny or claim without embodiment, underscoring the gap between genuine and performed arousal. Quick aside, that gap isn't moral failure. It's how social conditioning and safety strategies collide with biology. This is where masculine intuition is forged. Train attention like a Stoic swordsman. Calm nervous system, wide peripheral vision, zero attachment to outcome. Track clusters, not single signs. Pupils, breath, orientation, touch, escalation. That's a pattern. Anything less is noise. When patterns hold, proceed with presence. When they don't, set a boundary with grace. Slow the pace, name reality, invite authenticity, and accept whatever comes. That's ethical self-defense, not manipulation. Unconscious mirroring is a reliable bridge. When attraction is real, speech tempo matches yours, laughter lands a beat after you smile, her head tilts to your tilt. When it's performed, mirroring becomes theatrical, too perfect, too late, or missing altogether. The shadow leaks through micro-expressions. A hungry glance followed by a policing smile, a step forward then a quick retreat, a tease with a pinch of envy. Biology outs the ambivalence the persona wants to hide. None of this negates compassion. Attachment wounds, trauma, and social fear can disrupt honest arousal. Respectfully recognize the pattern without rescuing or punishing. Marcus Aurelius would frame it plainly. See what's there, act according to nature, don't add story. Your job isn't to extract desire, it's to honor truth and protect your center. Ancient observers noticed the same signals. Tantric texts speak of shining eyes, unbidden breath, and spontaneous swaying as signs of genuine Shakti rising. Different language, same biology. Use the indicators. Absence of spontaneous escalation. Inconsistent timing. Add them to the first two from earlier and you're already playing a different game. The real edge isn't chasing, it's reading, and then choosing, but biology isn't the whole map. The body can say yes while the heart says not yet. So the next question is simple and ruthless. Do her words, emotions, and choices harmonize with her body, or is there a split you're about to rationalize away? Building on that shadow dynamic discussed earlier, the next layer is energy, the felt atmosphere beneath the words. Biology whispers through pupils and breath. Emotion declares itself through tone, timing, and texture. The fifth indicator is simple but ruthless, emotional energy that doesn't match verbal expressions. Do you notice how her "I love you" sounds like she's reading a grocery list? The phrase lands, but the room stays flat. No warmth in the eyes, no echo in the body. It's the persona speaking while the authentic self keeps its distance. Attachment theory explains why this mismatch shows up so often. Insecure attachment styles, especially the avoidant and the anxious, learn to perform closeness for safety while keeping the heart armored. Avoidant patterns say, "I care," while the body leans away. Anxious patterns say, "I'm fine," while the nervous system vibrates with protest. Both are strategies, intelligent once, costly now. When words sell intimacy but energy doesn't buy, you're not crazy for feeling the gap. You're perceiving it. Freud would call much of this reaction formation, expressing the opposite of a threatening impulse. Fear of engulfment becomes exaggerated independence. Fear of abandonment becomes theatrical affection. The psyche flips the sign to stay safe. It's not malice, it's survival coding. But for a man seeking truth, it's a signal to slow down and read carefully. Micro story. He plans the perfect date, reservations, view, the right playlist humming in the car. She arrives glowing, compliments the effort, leans in for the photo, and checks her phone between courses. Laughter happens, but it's light, skimming the surface. The kiss tastes like obligation. Later that week, they're walking to get coffee, no plan, just the city breathing around them. A street musician hits a chord, she tucks into his shoulder, the conversation loops and deepens, phones disappear, time does that soft dissolve. Same woman, different energy. The persona excels under spotlight, the authentic self sneaks out when no one's performing. Research backs the performance problem. In 2021, work published in the Journal of Personality reported that roughly 7 in 10 adults with avoidant attachment admitted to performing intimacy, going through motions while keeping vulnerability offline. Rates vary by study, but the trend is consistent. Performance rises when closeness feels risky. That's not an accusation, it's a map. So what? Emotional incongruence is less a verdict and more a wound speaking. It points to attachment injuries that deserve compassion, not contempt. Your move isn't to shame or chase, it's to practice ethical self-defense. Set a clear standard, alignment matters. If her words say yes but her energy says later, you anchor in calm boundaries. Slow the pace. Invite honesty without pressure. Accept the answer integrity gives, even when it's inconvenient. As Seneca might advise, fortune favors the man who rules himself. Remember how Part 2 traced biological tells. Emotional truth and physical truth tend to braid. When her voice warms, eyes soften, and she leans unconsciously closer, you'll usually see the body corroborate, irregular breath, small reach behaviors, micro-mirroring. When the story is false, the threads split. Sweet words, still body. Big declarations, no escalation. Don't fixate on any single sign. Patterns decide. Marcus Aurelius wrote about looking through words to the thing itself. Translate that here. Attend to tone more than text, consistency more than confession. If I miss you arrives only when you pull away, that's timing speaking louder than language. If we're so good together lives beside avoidance of plans, that's the future answering with a no. Think of this as emotional archaeology. You're excavating layers, persona on top, protective stories beneath, authentic feeling at the base. Tools, curiosity, pacing, and presence. Ask fewer leading questions and pay more attention to spontaneous reveals. Notice where energy expands, laughter that lingers, topics she returns to the moment she forgets the mask. Notice where energy collapses, sudden fatigue, edgy phone checking, hyperpleasantness that feels oddly cold. The shadow doesn't confess directly, it leaks through mood and timing. A contrarian edge serves you here. The real test isn't how she speaks about love in warm lighting, it's how her nervous system behaves across ordinary days. Does enthusiasm appear only when status is at stake, photos are snapped, or jealousy is in the air? Or does desire visit quietly in grocery lines and rainy mornings? Machiavelli would say judge by outcomes, not proclamations. In relationships, outcomes are the rhythms people actually keep. The man who masters this stops negotiating with statements and starts measuring with patterns. He doesn't punish the mismatch, he honors it. If alignment grows, he invests. If it frays, he detaches without drama. That's strength with empathy, shadow-aware and steady. Because in the end, patterns reveal stories. And stories determine trajectories. What narrative is her energy telling you, beyond the words? And how will that map guide your next move when the behaviors start repeating? Why does her passion mysteriously peak around gift-giving occasions? Building on the emotional archaeology from earlier, the next lens is time. Patterns don't lie, they repeat. The sixth indicator is inconsistent investment, high performance during acquisition, minimal effort during comfort. Early on, the texts arrive first, laughter spills, touch escalates without prompting. Once secure, energy flattens, replies slow, plans are outsourced. Affection appears mainly when supply is threatened or benefits loom. Machiavellian analysis clarifies the power dynamic. When desire is performed, it serves strategy, not intimacy. The performance intensifies when leverage is needed, before commitment talks, around holidays, after conflict, when competition enters the frame. It recedes when terms are favorable and resources flow. In statecraft and love, actors amplify charm to secure concessions, then conserve effort. Not evil, simply instrumental. Your job isn't to demonize, it's to decode. Micro-story. Picture a man who starts tracking, not obsessively, just clearly. He notes when her enthusiasm spikes. The data writes a quiet story. Extra sweetness, the week rent is due. Sudden heat after he pulls back from constant rides and favors. Playful urgency when he mentions a weekend trip. Cool breeze when the calendar's empty. A psychological balance sheet forms. When attention, access, or gifts accrue, so does her passion. When he pauses investment, the temperature drops unless an incentive returns. The pattern isn't one night, it's quarters of behavior. He isn't angry, he's awake. Research echoes the observation. In couple dynamics datasets reported by Stanford-affiliated psychologists, roughly 64% of relationships display investment, return, desire patterns, affection rising with perceived benefit and falling when benefits stabilize. Correlation isn't destiny, but it's a bright flare. Performance chases return, authenticity sustains rhythm. So what? Recognition separates transactional from transformational connection. Transactional desire negotiates, what's in it for me today? Transformational desire commits to growth. How do we become more truthful together over time? You're not wrong to enjoy transaction in light doses. Stoicism calls gifts, trips, and status preferred indifference, pleasant, even useful, but not the measure of virtue. When a bond becomes hostage to them, your sovereignty erodes. The warrior regains footing by valuing consistency over spectacle. This is temporal pattern analysis, the next layer of archaeology. Watch cycles. Does passion peak after scarcity cues, jealousy, deadlines, distance, and vanish with stability? Does enthusiasm align with public moments yet fade in private? Nietzsche in Human, All Too Human, sketched the same rhythm. People often mistake reciprocal flattery for love and confuse instinct for advantage with devotion. The shadow sits behind the curtain, tugging strings called status, security, and control. Patterns expose those motives without a single fight. Practical frame for you: establish a baseline week where neither of you performs. Low-key plans, minimal novelty, then observe. If desire still surfaces, she initiates a plan, reaches for you during the ordinary, remembers what matters without reminder. You're seeing transformational potential. If warmth arrives mainly on the eve of upgrades or in the wake of withdrawal, you're in a negotiation masquerading as romance. No panic, just posture. Slow your spend. Increase clarity. Ask for reciprocity through behavior, not speeches. Quick aside, this changes everything. When you stop paying for intimacy with constant provision, you discover what remains when the fog of incentives clears. Authentic desire walks toward you without breadcrumbs. Performed desire pauses, recalculates, and waits for the next bonus. Tact still matters. Compassion doesn't mean complicity. If inconsistent investment persists, name the pattern calmly. The relationship feels hot when you're buying momentum and cool when you're not. Then set a boundary. Pace will match mutual effort. She's free to step in, you're free to step back. No threats, no sulking, just alignment. Epictetus would nod, control your choices, not hers. This is the paradox worth mastering: desire with detachment. Want the real thing but refuse to need the show. Enjoy the preferred indifference, but don't trade your inner republic for them. Because when you hold desire lightly, patterns reveal themselves quickly, and truth, not performance, becomes the standard. Which raises the next question: if strategy is stripped away, what philosophy anchors the bond you're building? What happens when you stop performing your role in her script? Building on the paradox of desire and detachment, this is where presence meets proof. Stoic clarity says outcome independence isn't apathy, it's sovereignty. When a man stands in his center, No begging, no bargaining. Authentic desire steps forward or steps away. Both are gifts. This lens reveals the seventh indicator, her response to your emotional withdrawal. Not a manipulative, silent treatment, but a clean return to self. Less texting, less fixing, less arranging, more focus on purpose. What unfolds? If desire is real, she orients toward you with congruent signals. Initiation without prompting, steady warmth across days, body and words in harmony. If desire is performed, she either escalates theatrics to hook attention, jealousy plays, timed flattery, situational heat, or detaches instantly because the benefit stream slowed. One response seeks the man, the other seeks the supply. Epictetus taught the dichotomy of control. Guard only what's yours, thoughts, choices, character. Apply it here. You can't manage her hunger or heal her wounds. You can control your availability, pace, and standards. The warrior archetype doesn't test, he calibrates. He says, here's the rhythm I keep. If you want in, bring truth. Micro story, he'd been performing, planning weekends, editing texts for maximum charm, cushioning every conflict. Attraction felt like a part-time job, then something shifted, genuine indifference born from full life. He returned to training, deep work, quiet evenings. No flounce, no speech. He simply stopped propping up the connection. Two outcomes appeared. One woman faded, the buzz collapsed without his effort. Another surprised him, messages with substance, invitations with dates, a softness that didn't vanish when he didn't chase. The first was hooked on the role he played. The second was choosing the man he was when he wasn't performing. Research aligns with the intuition. Studies reported in psychological science show that partners who signal secure, non-needy presence evoke significantly more genuine attraction. In one set of experiments, secure displays inspired about 43% more approach interest than anxious or approval-seeking behaviors. Security creates oxygen, neediness smothers it. Quick aside, Zen masters understood this centuries ago. Non-striving, wu-wei, lets what's real arrive without force. So what? Masculine presence creates space for feminine authenticity. When you're not trying to pull desire out of her, you can finally see whether desire grows on its own. It also disarms the persona. Masks need reaction to survive. Neutrality starves performance and invites truth. If she pursues with depth, initiates plans, mirrors your pace, remembers details, stays consistent after the high, believe the data. If she surges only when resources spike or attention threatens to wander, you're back in a transactional loop. Recognize it, don't moralize it. Tie this to the earlier indicators. Mechanical reciprocation without initiation. Emotional I love yous with flat energy. Inconsistent timing that blooms around benefits. Your withdrawal becomes the integrative test. Genuine desire weaves biology, emotion, and behavior into one fabric. Performed desire frays under reduced stimulus. Eyes stop dilating, breath stays even, memory gets fuzzy, engagement becomes episodic. You're not punishing, you're perceiving. Practical frame, cultivate energetic sovereignty. That means purposeful days, clean boundaries, and a nervous system that doesn't spike with every ping. You respond when available, not instantly. You match effort, not fantasy. You allow space so the relationship can breathe. The lover becomes deeper, not louder. The sage watches patterns over promises. The warrior protects time and standards. Presence over performance becomes the unified framework. Biology read accurately, emotion weighed calmly, behavior tracked across time, all held by outcome independence. Machiavelli would call this the end of being ruled by courtly theater. Nietzsche would cheer the affirmation of life without clinging. Jung would note the shadow loses leverage when you refuse to barter for love. And the Stoics would remind, preferred indifference, status, gifts, headlines are fine but never the spine. Keep the spine. This isn't cynicism, it's compassion with a backbone. Detachment lets you meet her where she truly is, not where your craving wants her to be. If authenticity appears, you receive it fully. If it doesn't, you bow out cleanly. No punishments, no auditions, no campaigns, just truth, which leaves the decisive hinge for what comes next. Once her response to your centered withdrawal is clear, how do you translate that signal into daily choices? What to say, how to pace, when to stay, and when to step away? How do you respond when you realize she's performing rather than feeling? Building on sovereignty from before, this is where recognition becomes leadership. Intelligent boundaries aren't punishments, they're a clean frame that reveals truth. The warrior protects his time and heart, the sage reads the field without flinching, and the lover invites the real thing without forcing it. Trauma-informed clarity matters. Many people perform because performance once kept them safe, appeasing to avoid conflict, pleasing to secure love, numbing to survive chaos. That history deserves compassion. And yet, compassion without standards becomes self-abandonment. You're not here to diagnose, you're here to choose. Jung would call this individuation in relationship. Two adults shedding persona, integrating shadow, meeting as whole beings rather than masks. Here's a simple protocol that honors both truth and dignity. Regulate before you relate. Slow breath, steady tone. No retaliation, no rescue. Calm is credibility. State observable patterns, not accusations. I notice affection spikes before events, then fades the next week. Clean facts over loaded story. Name standards. Intimacy here means mutual initiation, consistent warmth, and honest no's allowed. Standards are invitations, not demands. Offer an authentic invitation. If you're not feeling it, that's safe to say. I won't punish a no. Safety makes truth possible. Set the boundary. If the mismatch continues, I'll slow contact and reshape plans until we're aligned. Pace follows reciprocity. Hold the line, follow through softly. Boundaries that wobble become theater. Micro story. Late evening, kitchen light low, kettle hissing. He places his phone face down, not as a stunt, just present. He says, I enjoy you. I also notice passion arrives when plans are big, then goes quiet. I want the real thing, even if that means less right now. She exhales, the first real breath of the night. Two paths appear. In one she softens, admits fear of being used, and asks to go slower with more honesty. Touch becomes rarer but warmer, eyes steadier, memory sharper. The relationship transforms. In the other she bristles, blames, then offers a surge of glitter without substance. He thanks her clarity, steps back respectfully, and discovers peace on the other side of loss. Either outcome, dignity stays intact. Research in social psychology consistently shows this. Clear, calmly enforced boundaries increase authentic relating. Reports in the Journal of Social Psychology describe gains on the order of 2/3 when partners explicitly define expectations and follow through. Correlation isn't destiny, but the signal is strong. Where standards are visible, performances fade and truth stands up. Quick aside, this changes everything. So what? Standards elevate both partners. They refuse pseudo-intimacy and reward genuine vulnerability. When you uphold sacred standards, mutual initiation, emotional congruence, steady effort, you create a field where only authenticity pays. Nietzsche warned against confusing pity for virtue. In love, pity often keeps masks alive. Real kindness is structure, it says. Let's meet as equals or let's part with respect. Tie this to shadow work. The shadow wants power, safety, validation. Boundaries expose those motives without shaming them. When you remove the payoff for performance, no extra access for theatrics, no gifts for cold weeks, the shadow loses leverage and often integrates. If she chooses growth, the relationship matures. If not, you don't carry a role that starves you. Make the authentic invitation explicit. Design conditions where truth thrives. Slower timelines, fewer grand gestures, more ordinary days. Normalize honest no's. Create a non-retaliation policy around feedback. Replace vague talk with measurable behaviors. Who initiates, who plans, who follows through. Shift from promistrating to pattern tracking. When in doubt, return to the body and the calendar. Do biology and time agree with the words? Seneca wrote about preserving dignity amid entanglement. In practice, that means you don't chase to end silence, you don't gift to fix distance, you don't argue with patterns. You stay open, not porous, warm, not wishful. If it's mutual, it'll move toward you. If it's performance, it wilts under steady light. There is, of course, a cost to authenticity. It may cost applause, the rush of intermittent reinforcement, the comfort of a script. It may cost a relationship that only worked when you overgave. Are you willing to pay that price so that what remains is real, setting the stage for the deeper descent that comes next? Are you prepared to be alone rather than accepting counterfeit connection? That single question draws a hard circle around the price of truth. Boundaries reveal reality. Reality sometimes walks away. Building on the standards set earlier, this is the toll booth you can't bypass. Demanding authenticity may cost the relationship that depended on your performance. The grief is real. Call it relational awakening and map it with Kubler-Ross. Denial, maybe it's just a phase, the next trip will fix it. Anger, after everything given this. Bargaining, one more gesture, one more compromise, maybe then the spark returns. Depression, quiet kitchens, long evenings, the weight of your own breathing. Acceptance, the mask fell, now it's on you to stop wearing yours. The warrior experiences each stage without dramatics, the sage names them, the lover refuses to numb. You don't rush grief, you metabolize it. Micro story. He chooses solitude over a glossy performance. The first nights are brutal, no weekend plans, no dopamine pings, only the hum of the refrigerator and a couch that suddenly feels too honest. He walks at dusk, leaves his phone at home, lets the city's ordinary sounds replace the carnival. Weeks pass. He returns to heavy lifts, deep work, unhurried dinners with old friends. One morning he notices something small and enormous. Silence isn't hostile anymore, it's clean. Anxiety that used to crawl up the spine around unanswered messages is gone. Peace doesn't announce itself, it accumulates. Nietzsche called it amor fati, love your fate, including necessary losses, not tolerance, love. The contrarian twist is simple. The man who can bless endings becomes irresistible to beginnings. He isn't chasing closure, he is closure. Research supports the long view. Longitudinal work in the Journal of Marriage and Family reports that men who maintain clear authenticity standards are far likelier to report higher life satisfaction 5 years on. In some samples, roughly 78% report meaningful gains compared to those who kept compromising. That doesn't mean pain skips your door. It means alignment compounds. So what? Loss is often liberation in disguise. When the counterfeit leaves, so does chronic cognitive dissonance, the nervous system's quiet civil war. Remember Part 2's biology. Authenticity calms physiology. Sleepless scanning for mixed signals fades. Breath sinks lower. Heart rate variability improves with a steadier life. Appetite and focus return. It isn't just an emotional win, it's biological relief. Trauma-informed compassion still applies. Performance often protected her from earlier chaos. Respect that backstory while refusing to relive it. Jung would frame this as individuation by fire, separating from the collective script to stand as a whole man. The shadow hates endings because endings starve it of drama. Let it protest and let it pass. Marcus Aurelius faced similar choices, empires on his shoulders, grief in his home, imperfect bonds he met with steadiness. He wrote about returning to what's essential when fortune rearranges the board. Quick aside, few things rewire a life faster than taking the hit without breaking your code. Practical markers that you're crossing the river. You stop narrating your pain for sympathy and start practicing your values in silence. You default to no rush instead of no standards. You notice you can hold attraction and boundaries in the same breath. Even your taste shifts. Mascots of performance lose luster. You're drawn to quiet competence and mutuality. The cost remains. You may forfeit companionship, rituals, a shared social circle, the easy answer to what are you doing this weekend. Pay it anyway. Because the alternative is a lifelong mortgage on your self-respect with interest. And when the fire has eaten what was false, something archetypal happens. The warrior grows gentle without losing edge. The lover feels again without begging. The sage trusts pattern over promise. Men who cross this threshold don't return to counterfeit currencies, they carry cash in character. So ask the hardest question with unblinking honesty. Is the grief you fear worse than the slow erosion you're already living? Because on the other side of that honest burn lives the oldest myth made new, the phoenix that only rises after the nest is ash. Ready to watch what you were become fuel for who you're becoming. What if her inauthenticity is your greatest teacher? Building on the phoenix stage losses just faced, this is the alchemy. Take the heavy lead of craving and heat it until it becomes gold, self-sourced worth. In Jung's language, the relationship was a mirror for the shadow. It showed where approval addiction lived, where the boy inside still begged the world to confirm he mattered. Alchemy calls this negrito, the blackening, when illusions burn and the raw ore of character is revealed. Then comes transmutation. He stops trying to extract desire from others and begins generating value from within. Not a performance of confidence, a practice of it. Shadow integration looks like catching the old impulse to fix, to chase, to audition, and choosing presence instead. The organism that once scanned for cues now scans inward. Breath, posture, purpose. The warrior claims discipline, the lover learns to receive. The sage sits with discomfort until it turns into clarity. Gold forms slowly, micro-story. He releases the need to be desired. That sounds romantic, it starts ugly. Mornings arrive quiet and ordinary, no dopamine from intermittent texts. He pours that energy into training, craft, and friendships that don't require theatrical affection. Weeks later, something shifts. In a cafe, a stranger smiles. He smiles back without the old spike. At dinner with friends, he speaks less and listens more. He doesn't sell himself, he inhabits himself. Attraction finds him, not because he's baiting it, but because he's chosen himself whether it arrives or not. The paradox shows up. When he stops chasing authenticity, authentic women notice him. Neuroscience gives the mystery a skeleton. Self-affirmation and internal validation engage regions like the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, centers tied to value and self-referential coherence, while dampening alarm in threat circuits that fuel approval-seeking. Secure states light up reward pathways without needy volatility. The body telegraphs that steadiness. Shoulders drop, breath deepens, micro-expressions relax. People read those signals before they understand them, and the result looks like magnetism. Quick aside, less mystical than it sounds, the nervous system is always broadcasting. Stoic practice makes it reproducible. He writes a brief moral inventory at night. Where did he act from virtue, where from appetite? He begins the day with premeditatio malorum, visualizing plans failing and remaining composed. He practices voluntary discomfort, a cold shower, a hard workout, a candid conversation. He breathes through urges to overtext. He treats compliments as preferred indifference, pleasant, not defining. He schedules solitude the way others schedule meetings. Self-respect stops being an idea and becomes a routine. Attachment theory catches up. Earlier, the avoidant-anxious loop fueled performance. Now he earns secure attachment from the inside out. He builds safe harbor in his own nervous system, self-soothing without denial, self-confrontation without shame. He reparents the parts that wanted to be rescued. He speaks to himself in the tone he wants from a partner, warm, firm, honest. When new intimacy appears, he can stay connected without fusing and set limits without running. That's secure in practice. So what? Transcending the need for authentic desire paradoxically attracts it. People can feel when you're not for sale. The old indicators flip. Initiation appears unprompted because there's no vacuum to fill. Timing becomes consistent because you're not bribing. Energy matches words because you're not rewarding performance. Presence over performance becomes a way of being, not a tactic. Ethical self-defense, those intelligent boundaries turn into hospitality for the real. Desire is welcome, auditioning is not. This is the coherent philosophy that threads the whole series. Biology is read without superstition. Emotion is weighed without melodrama. Behavior is tracked across time. Power dynamics are decoded without cynicism. Loss is metabolized into strength, and all of it orbits one non-negotiable, self-sourced worth. Nietzsche's amor fati hums beneath it, loving fate enough to bless rejection because it reveals the path. The hero's journey shows up too. The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek, and the treasure was never her validation, it was your sovereignty. Picture the transformed man. He walks slower. He answers later. He laughs easier. Boundaries are quiet, standards are visible, kindness is real. If desire approaches, he welcomes it. If performance knocks, he offers water and sends it on its way. No spikes, no sermons, just gravity. And with that center of gravity set, the final integration waits. How does a man who no longer chases validation build a life and a love that stays true under pressure? When you become the sun, everything else naturally orbits around your gravity. Building on the ashes of loss and the gold of self-sourced worth, the journey culminates here. A man so centered that authenticity is the only response he elicits. He doesn't seek or reject desire, he stands. The field around him does the sorting. Marcus Aurelius called it the unconquerable mind, the citadel no storm can breach. Translate that into modern presence: steady breath, deliberate pacing, attention free from grasping. Women feel it before they interpret it. Performance loses oxygen around him. Authenticity either steps forward or exits with respect. Both outcomes are welcomed as clarity. Micro story. He enters a room without haste. No scanning, no silent pitch. He speaks with the bartender, thanks the staff, laughs with friends. A woman approaches with glittering theatrics, loud compliments, strategic touches, a choreography designed to hook. His response isn't cold, it's clean. He matches warmth but not the pace, keeps his frame, shifts conversation to substance. Within minutes, the performance softens. Her voice drops, posture relaxes, real curiosity appears, or she drifts away, realizing there's nothing to latch onto. Later, another woman joins, quiet and grounded. No show, just congruence. The evening requires no analysis. Presence did the filtering. This is the synthesis of all 7 indicators into intuitive knowing. He no longer counts texts or decodes pupils like a lab tech. He notices breath without staring, timing without tallying, investment without spreadsheets. He reads whether there's spontaneous escalation or just responsive acting. He feels the consistency of desire across ordinary days. He registers energy matching words or not. He observes the response to his centered withdrawal. Does pursuit become genuine, or do benefits vanish? The data lands quickly, then dissolves into calm decisions. Nietzsche called it becoming who you are. Not a mask, not a tactic, nature expressed without apology. The warrior enforces standards without drama. The lover offers warmth without need. The sage perceives patterns without story. The king holds the whole kingdom, shadow integrated, appetites disciplined, vision clear. Machiavelli would note that courtly theater can't run a state. Here, theater can't run a life. Research backs what intuition already knows. Across relationship studies, men who display self-actualization, purpose, self-regulation, pro-social confidence, consistently receive higher ratings of genuine attraction, independent of conventional looks. In some multi-study datasets, the lift can be dramatic, roughly 83% more approach interest. The mechanism isn't mystery, it's coherence. People trust what feels internally aligned. Quick aside, this plays out in hiring, friendship, and leadership the same way. So what? Mastery over detecting inauthenticity must evolve into mastery over needing authenticity. That's the final turn. Outcome independence is no longer a strategy to get more yesies. It's a way of living that honors truth, including no. Desire becomes a welcome guest, not a landlord. When a woman answers with real heat, he meets it fully. When she offers performance, he meets it kindly and lets it pass. Practical signs you've arrived. Anxiety doesn't spike with silence. Standards don't wobble under pressure. Compliments land but don't hook. You enjoy preferred indifference, beauty, novelty, status, while keeping the inner republic intact. You're generous without buying affection, romantic without bargaining, sexual without scrambling. Biology aligns with Stoic calm, breath steady, eyes bright, humor easy. This is magnetic authenticity, not because it's loud, but because it's sane. And yes, it applies beyond romance. The same presence detangles office politics, clarifies friendships, and steadies family dynamics. Performance quiets in your company because you don't reward it. Truth grows because it's safe. That's the hidden civic duty of a sovereign man. His gravity tidies the social field. Look back at the path. Biology taught the involuntary. Emotion exposed the incongruent. Patterns revealed strategy. Detachment unlocked proof. Boundaries built the frame. Loss burned the dross. Alchemy forged worth. The result isn't a trick, it's a crown worn inside the ribcage. Schopenhauer's will to life is honored, Freud's defenses understood, Jung's shadow befriended. The man who lives here doesn't audition and doesn't punish, he chooses. If you want a final metric, use this: presence that dissolves performance. When you show up, the room relaxes or rearranges. Some draw nearer with honest eyes, others step back without conflict. Either way, you remain. That's the sun effect. No chasing, no collapsing, no theater, just gravity. The closing paradox is simple. The less you need authenticity, the more it finds you. Because you've become the uncommon constant, self-actualized, calm, deliberately kind, hard to move off center. The signal goes out. Here is a man who won't trade sovereignty for heat. Authentic desire recognizes its home. The man who commands his shadows doesn't chase, he builds from within. Recall the clarity after breaking through that fog, the moment the urge to audition for affection went quiet. Picture the still kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator, your phone face down and irrelevant. Breath deepens. The nervous scan stops. That's the point. Emotional freedom isn't loud, it's clean. The shadow that once begged for validation now stands beside you, integrated, disciplined, useful. Across these 7 indicators, the pattern is unmistakable. Performance spikes around benefits. Words glow while energy flickers. Timing flatlines once you're secured. Withdrawal exposes what's real. The warrior learned to protect time and standards. The lover learned warmth without need. The sage learned to trust patterns over promises. Together, the king emerged, sovereign, calm, unhurried. Jung would call it individuation, Nietzsche becoming who you are. Epictetus reminds, control what's yours, your presence, your pace, your yes and your no. Machiavelli would add, starve the courtly theater and only truth remains on stage. Here's the contrarian twist that closes the loop. You don't need authenticity to be at peace. You choose peace and authenticity chooses you. That's the rebirth, detachment from validation with a steady, open heart. Consent and boundaries aren't tactics, they're the architecture of mutual growth. Power with not over, a final micro scene, night air, cool and ordinary. He steps out, shoulders loose, no silent pitch to the world. In conversation, performance dissolves or departs. Real desire arrives unforced or not at all, and both answers feel right. That's inner peace, not indifference. So what now? Implement one standard this week that makes truth inevitable. Match effort without ceremony. Slow the pace until reciprocity shows up. Have one clean conversation that names patterns without blame. Schedule solitude like training. Quick aside, implement this now. Harnessing those hidden forces, it's the edge to true mastery. If these revelations resonated, like the video to affirm it, subscribe to PsycheFlame for ongoing tools to command your path. Share this with a peer ready for this edge and comment below what's one strategy you'll deploy this week. Your insight sharpens the field for everyone. Leave this episode lighter. You don't chase heat, you radiate composure. You don't bargain for desire, you invite truth and respect an honest no. The man who masters his shadows doesn't pursue, he constructs from strength.